I'm Jamie. This is Dead Dodge Garage, and this is a crime of opportunity. When you're locked into the Mopar hoarding lifestyle like I am, you're constantly searching for things that are worth buying. Whether it be for parts, a future project, or simply to save a life, you can almost always come up with an excuse to buy an affordable project car. Obviously, it helps considerably to have some space to stack things up like Turbo Rampage project cars, crappy old Dodge Vans and Zs, also Dakotas. We'll talk about that one later. I've made it my life's mission essentially to save as many classic Chrysler products as I can, even if they're really crappy and even if it takes years sometimes. Now, I'm far from a man of considerable means, and even now that I make money off of these little videos I put up on YouTube working on these cars, I still don't have much of a budget to buy them. So I've always used a formula that has proved relatively successful. And that formula balances cost and distance. For example, if a car is free, but it's in Florida, I'm probably not going to get that car. If a car is right next door, but it costs $20,000, I won't be buying that either. However, if there's a classic Chrysler product in my town and it costs $500, I am on my way with an empty trailer. And that's how I came to own this 1977 Dodge D100 long bed. It is almost impossible to lose on a deal like this. Best case, we get it running and have a party. Worst case, it's a total piece of garbage, it never runs again, and we sell parts off of it. Either way, at least from a financial standpoint, everything will probably be fine. Now you're going to notice right off the bat this truck has seen some things. There's some various parts missing from it, like the all-important tin grille, for example, and the bird bath hood. Those parts are present, but they're not currently installed. Apparently, the gentleman that owned this truck before had been driving it, but wanted to spruce it up a little bit, clean, reseal, and detail the engine, start on some much-needed body work. There's a whole bunch of Bondo in here under this spray-painted primer, and in general, improve the truck as much as he could. He took it apart to complete this work, and it was never really finished. That original engine receiving some new gaskets and a fresh coat of, I want to say, Ford blue? The venerable 225 Slant 6, of course. Behind that Slant 6, we've got a 727. This is specific to Slant 6 powered pickup trucks in a car you'd only ever see in 904. Maybe there were taxis that had the 727 behind a Slant 6. This is actually a replacement, good used transmission as the original one did not shift correctly. Admire the shininess of that transmission pan. Admire the current lack of drive shaft. We'll get to that. Everything that's been breathed on in this truck is wearing a fresh coat of paint. And that's great, except that in most cases that paint was poorly applied with a brush or with a rattle can, and it's probably not going to stand up to the test of time. I can tell this fender was totally hammered, but I wish it was still totally hammered in two-tone brown. Instead, it's this. Here's the bird bath hood. It doesn't have any holes in it, but for some reason, it's covered in red primer. The original paint is still under that red primer, and trying to remove it is a tempting thought, but I could see that it had been sanded before the paint was applied. It's probably a lost cause. Also, it's dented. This fender is a totally different shade of primer. We're kind of just going to have to take this as an it is what it is type situation. I have no intentions of restoring this truck. Admire the 8-foot long bed. If this was a short bed D100, we might actually have something cool here. But no, it's just your typical long bed configuration with the typical rust. How do you like that stupid camper shell canopy thing? I hate it. Also, it doesn't fit right. Also, the back glass doesn't stay open. You'll have noticed there are many parts missing from this thing, both under the hood and, well, everywhere else. And most of them are back here. The tin grill itself is not currently. Alan took that home to the North Pole for some polishing. We'll get to that later. Here's one of the best parts. This is a Super 6 two-barrel intake manifold, and it's wearing a BBD. It might even be the correct one for a Slant, although I'm not sure. It was remanufactured at some point, but that must have been a while ago. It actually gets even better than that, because there was a second one in the bed, which has already been cleaned and painted. It's rusted slightly since then, but that's all right. This, in addition to a Super 6 manifold dropped off by a subscriber named Jared, who I thank very much for this donation. Now I've got 3 of these things. He also brought a good BBD core and a Rochester 2-jet. At some point in the near future, these parts will be bolted on to the 170 in the 1963 Valiant for testing and science. The excellentness continues though, because there are actually 2 Super 6 compatible exhaust manifolds back here. And this one I thought was in very good shape, but it turns out to be cracked like the rest of them. The The one which he did not clean and paint, which according to this date code is actually the original from the truck, appears to be in really good shape, so at least we've got one. Here are the rubberish inner fender dirt guard thingies. There's a bunch of like planter stuff back here. Missing pieces of trim, glad to see those. The front bumper, which is of course smashed and very bent. A new oil filter we won't be using. There's a brand new caliper rusting in this box, which I guess means this thing needs a caliper. This box is full of brand new fluids, a Haynes manual, and the column shift linkage, which we're really going to need. And yet there is more. Here's the old cap, which really wasn't in bad shape, at least on the inside. Set of wires that are probably still usable too. And then we've got a blue streak with good brass contacts and a brand new set of blue spark plug wires. We definitely need that. And we also need this bag labeled engine mount because, yeah, the engine was just set back in the truck. It is not attached in any way. Thankfully, the drive shaft is here. It appears to have had new U-joints relatively recently, so that can just go right back in. There's another BBD in a box. It has one of those electric choke conversion kits, which we might need. No idea what kind of shape that is in. It appears to be an original. It's still an original ID tag. The transmission cooling lines have seen some stuff, which is unfortunate. But wait, there's more. There's the original 4-blade fan. This thing has like a 7-blade on it for some reason. Here's a brand new head gasket. Probably not worth using. I thought that was a front crank seal. What are the flat O-rings though? Might be transmission stuff? I have no idea. There's a dome light lens. I'm guessing we're gonna need that. It's in really nice shape. Starter, crusty alternator, new brake hardware, water pump, starter shim, a brake pedal pad, multiple old water pumps, spare transmission dipstick tube, a distributor core, good vacuum pod, spark plugs. Don't think we'll be using those. It seems odd that I've reached a point in life where I'm almost more excited to have another tote than I am to have the crappy parts inside the tote. Interesting note, this is a factory 2-tank truck. It's got the in-cab tank behind the seat, and then it's got a bed tank right here. From the smells of things, the front tank is the one that it's been run on, so we'll be sticking with that. These tires are strangely decent. 3 of them are 7 years old, and one of them's only 3 years old, but it's the same Goodyear Wrangler. I guess we can look in the truck. There are actually some decent things to find in here. For one thing, the door panels are pretty nice. They must not have been original black, or they probably wouldn't be undercoated. Also, these custom inserts are interesting. There appears to be Dynamat type soundproofing back there. Pretty sure this hole was for a little tiny tweeter. There's also a hole for a speaker here. That speaker is gone. Now, at first glance, I noticed something very strange. This truck has metal right here in the floor. It might even be original metal. Here's the factory Slant 6 truck radiator sitting on the seat. We almost didn't get this. It was put in the garage for safekeeping, and thankfully Alan realized we didn't have it right before we left. There's some nice looking wiper arms. This seat is totally roached and made out of duct tape under this cover. Yeah, there's the cab tank. Looks decent from the outside at least. Factory shoulder belts, because 1977. I don't know if they actually work or are firmly attached to the truck. This is a strangely good cab. There's no rust anywhere. In fact, there's only one thing wrong with it, and it's this stupid sunroof someone hacked into the truck. It's been sealed solid, and hopefully it doesn't leak, but it sure looks dumb. Also, it's broken. Factory Super 6 air cleaner assembly. That's a nice piece. Battery isolator? For some reason. Maybe this was a camper truck. I don't know. I don't see any holes back there for wiring for a camper. Spare ignition module. Might work. Hold down for that. Is this? Oh, trailer brake controller. Cup holder included free of charge. A second Super 6 air cleaner assembly. This one doesn't say Super 6 on it, and it's been spray painted blue for some reason. Okay, this could be a more typical 318 unit. I don't even know how to tell. Here's the dash in the truck. Things are kind of interesting here. For one thing, it's got aftermarket gauges, which appear to be brand new-ish. I was told it was running and driving with these, but I can't help but notice the odometer shows 0.2 miles. There's a video clock over there, and in the middle, we have this gigantic doubled-in touchscreen stereo thingy. That looks nice, although I'm sure it's just about the cheapest one money could buy. We've got a factory black steering wheel, which has been cracked. or something. We've got the custom style dash with the custom badge and some chrome. Someone seems to have put a lot of time into this. Here's something odd. I'm pretty sure this hole is for the convenience light usually seen in Ram Chargers and Trail Dusters. A D-Series shouldn't even have that. Admire this dash. This is like perfect. And so is the glove box door, which is really, really rare. I found kickdown linkage in the bed, but there is a different kickdown linkage on the bracket, and that one's been cleaned and painted. I also found intake hardware back there, but apparently that was spare. Here's a baggie of intake hardware that has been cleaned and coated somehow. There are certainly some goofy things going on here, but overall, there's a lot to like. This thing is in pretty decent shape. So that's what we've got to work with here. But what are we doing with it? You know, I was wondering that myself. I didn't exactly go into this with a plan or anything. I just knew I wanted to save a life. However, looking at this 225 Slant 6 with no manifold stuck to it, I have had a thought. That's right. Surprise! The turbo is not in the 63 Valiant. It's going to hang off the side of this 225 under the hood of a 77 Dodge D100. And we're going to learn some stuff. Here's my thinking. Something I've heard many times in my turbo slant pursuits is that my whole problem is the fact that I'm using a 170 Slant 6. I have had countless people tell me that I should try this setup on a 225 instead, or on a different engine that's known good. This one supposedly was good. Obviously, I haven't heard it run. I did verify the crank still turns. It was supposedly driving around without issue about 2 years ago, so that's good enough for me, I guess. Obviously, if I had built this setup to fit a 225 and to fit a truck, I would have done some things differently. For one thing, the turbo could have been another inch or two that way, alleviating the need to slightly grind this engine mount bracket. My support bracket at the back for the 170 can't be used here. First, it's way too short. Second, there's going to be a starter in the way. Obviously, there is now a question of what manifold and what fuel system go on this thing. In the interest of making a direct comparison, I think I am obligated to use this 4-barrel manifold, at least to start with. As you saw, I now have a 2-barrel Super 6 setup to test on this anyway, so this needs to come off. It's quite a while later, and I've liberated the offy manifold and this Holley 750 double pumper that's totally wrong for this application off of the 170. I do need to change the fuel line setup. I need to figure out something for a throttle, but we'll get there. I'll be putting that 2-barrel setup on this thing in the, let's say, near future. That, of course, will be a separate video. Still need to lube that hood. I borrowed the hardest working starter in the Galaxy off of the 170 as well. These teeth kind of look better than I expected. We'll pop that on here again for extra room around the turbo. And here is the turbo and manifold setup. I've temporarily removed that brace. If this setup actually works and continues to live on the 225, we'll make a new one that's taller. But for now, all that's going to be holding the turbo up is this terrible, terrible weld holding this manifold together. I'm sure that'll be fine. Also, I did have to snug all of my wastegate connections. I might have slightly broken the truck oil dipstick trying to bend it out of the way of the turbo. This is the little support bracket, which you can see the factory put on with one goober weld. That broke, so I guess I'll be fixing that later. I've just got it out all together now to make some room. You can see the notch here I'm gonna have to make in the engine mount bracket. I had to do something similar on the 170. This is actually much less significant. So anyway, I put a blankie on the engine's head to keep the chunks of metal out, and I started cutting. Poorly, and I exploded my cutoff wheel. But there is some space for an oil drain back there now. Oh, it's the same show as the first time I did this. Make one cut, mount it again, the turbo swings in closer to its final position, make another cut, bend it, then it almost fits, but you have to make a third cut, and another bend on the back. It might work now. Okay, it fits. Barely, which is good. I was getting really tired of lifting that in and out. Also, I've got the starter in. If you don't know, the mini starter is just a factory starter from the late 80s into the 90s. They fit right in place of the old gigantic ones. Time for the most annoying and difficult part of this whole thing, and the part I screwed up really good on the 170 pan. I need to add a drain back for this turbo. All of the oil that runs through it needs to return to the pan, and it needs to do so through a fitting right here. I welded the one weldable fitting into the 170 pan, so now I'm going to have to use an AN fitting like this. Note it has pipe thread on there. I think that's 1/2-inch pipe. AN on the other, you know, that inverted taper setup. So essentially what we're going to do here is punch a hole. As we do that, we're going to try and roll this material inward so there's something in there that I can tap some pipe threads into. And hopefully it magically becomes the right size. This isn't going to be the greatest, I'll tell you that right now. I'd love to drill this out nicely and have a weld-in fitting and have the pan off the truck, but that's not an option today. Well, okay, it is an option, but I'm not doing it. My biggest tapered punch I'm going to try and use to do this is not quite large enough to meet the size of those threads. It's close, but I don't know, this may require some creativity. I center punched the spot, then I drilled something like a 1/4 inch pilot hole to get this punch started. And then I just kind of worked it to this point. That's almost as much as I'll get out of that one. So now I'll switch to the bigger one. This material is a lot stronger than I expected, and this was pretty hard to get started. Once I did though, it's going pretty well. Haven't punched it into the crank yet. Here's what the hole looks like now that I'm done with that second punch size. Not bad, right? You can see how it rolls the material in there, and we've at least got something to work with. I've decided to quit while I'm ahead. Instead of trying to enlarge it to the 1/2 inch size, I'm gonna go for 3/8 pipe. This is an adapter that steps down that AN to 3/8 pipe. You can see it is a smaller hole than the 1/2 pipe, but honestly, not by all that much. And this is still significantly larger than the pressurized feed. I think we'll be just fine on return with this. Hey, don't forget to put some grease on your tap so it hopefully catches all of the metal shavings and they don't go into the oil pan. Sure glad I remembered to do that before I started tapping the hole. There we've got metal shavings conveniently captured by grease and a pretty darn good looking threaded hole. I'm proud of that. I've never actually used this technique before. I've just read about it on the internet. It works mint. Now, pipe threads are interesting, primarily because they are tapered. Both the hole and the part you're threading into the hole have a tapered shape to the threads. In this way, they're self-sealing, although a sealant on the threads is a great idea too. The part I've never yet understood is how to know how deep to run the tap. You see, it gets wider the further down you go, and so if you tap this too far, it stands to reason that your fitting may just go all the way down into the hole you've made without ever sealing. If you don't go far enough, well, it may only go in a thread, or 2 threads, or it may not start at all. I have been successful in making usable pipe holes, but it's the same way I do so many things, kind of shooting in the dark and, I don't know, guessing. And there's a finished turbo drain back line. God, I love learning stuff. That was pretty easy. Now it's time to figure out the feed end of things. This is the flexible line that was included with the turbo kit. I put this on the other car and it leaked from right here, constantly. It leaked worse than that stupid fitting I welded into the oil pan terribly. I thought it was an issue with the flare. It may have actually been a little bit of debris in there, but that could have been picked up when I took it apart too. It looks like it was making good contact, so it's possible it was actually leaking out of the crimped area here. So I have 2 options. I can test this on the new setup with the understanding that it might leak and also it might not reach the oil fitting location. On the 170, it's drilled into the side of the block, straight into the galley. On the 225, there's no hole there and it comes all the way off the oil pump, which is a bit further. Option 2 is build a new line. Now this is something kind of like an AN line. This fitting is super goofy. It's just like a swiveling backwards flare. You see that goes over a cone piece on the turbo and tightens down and seals that way. On the other side, it has a flare, much like you'd get on a brake or fuel line. I wanted to make this out of solid line from the get-go, and this would be my chance to do that. I have plenty of line nuts to use on the feed side, but to get into the turbo, you have to have female threads, and the cone has to be backwards inside. It can't have the little inverted flare thingy. I didn't have anything like that, so I did some digging online, and it turns out Earl's, manufacturer of AN lines and other stuff I'm sure, makes a fitting that does exactly this. It goes onto a metal line that is then flared, and it would go over that piece on the turbo. I don't have any of those, but I do have these. These are caps for an AN connection, and note, that is a free-floating part that is kind of punched in place. If I remove that, this is the right type of line nut. So I could build a metal line. I would need 1/4 inch line to do that, and I don't have that either. I only have 3/16 on hand. I actually have AN line and fittings too, but I don't have any in the -4 size. I only have -6, which is way too big. Okay, somehow the flexible line is exactly the right length to reach to that pump. So I guess I'm gonna give this one more shot, and if it leaks, I'll build another one later. Oh no, I'm running out of nipples. There's our turbo oil feed line in place. I've got it off the turbo. Of course, I do need to purge that before I connect it. Make sure any debris is captured somewhere not inside our turbo. Now I've connected that to a T over here. I was going to attach a mechanical line for an oil pressure gauge. I kind of figured the one in the dash was mechanical because of this piece's existence in the engine. They're not. They're electronic style gauges, and I don't think I have the sending units for them. So I guess I'm plugging that hole. We'll know if there's no oil pressure. I'm missing the threaded on both ends studly piece that goes in there and mounts the oil filter as well. In fact, I think the Slant 6 one even has like an extended thingy on it. Yeah, there totally is a shafty thing. I did have to slightly horribly mangle the truck dipstick tube. It kind of does a curlicue now, and it's hard to get the stick in there, but I have verified there's no oil in it. Also, remember that thing I said about the electrical temp gauge and oil gauge? Do I even know what I'm talking about? We'll hook it up later. Shiny new Wix towel filter. Probably too nice for this thing. Note to self. Check the oil drain plug. We're good. 5 quarts in, it's finally touching this rusty dipstick. This may actually take like 6 quarts. It seems like a lot for a Slant 6, but it is a big truck pan. You know, that's actually one big advantage of the truck-mounted Slant 6 and truck engines in general. Rear sump. Unlike the factory mid-sump pans, which have destroyed countless engines over the years by allowing the oil to run up into the back of the pan and away from the pickup, the truck pan has the sump back here. The oil really doesn't have anywhere to go, and it hangs out where it's supposed to be. Okay, now after waiting for a bit, it's right between the add and full marks. Not that you can see that. So yeah, I think it's another quart, because we've got to fill the filter, and we've also got to fill the turbo and the line. One forever later. We've got an engine full of oil. We've got the oil feed line to the turbo run into an oil jug bottle thing. I'm going to purge the line into there, and then we'll hook that up to the turbo so it can get pre-lubricated as well. Although, of course, that turbo's already run and been oiled, and it should be fine. But we can check for leaks and stuff. We've got battery cables. I did have to ground the negative here on the bracket for the power steering pump, which I've still got off for now. Need to hook those lines up and fill that system. This seems fine. That should probably be grounded somewhere though. Relays here, start button. Let's see what it does. Okay, that is not 6 even cylinders. I don't know if that's like any cylinders. I could have done this before I did all of this. Oh well, and purge the thing, and then we'll figure out whatever. Man, that took a lot of cranking. This thing must have been dry for quite a while. I didn't like the look of it at first. It almost looked watery, but that went away pretty fast. Yeah, now that I think about it, I probably should have pulled the drain plug to begin with, but it's a little late now. Okay, I think I figured out the issue here. Those threads are garbage, and it wasn't actually seated all the way. This still swivels, but this doesn't, so I guess that's what it's supposed to do. I don't know, hopefully this is good. I need to like carefully zip tie this back from the exhaust. It's not touching, but it's kind of close, and I don't like that. Here's what it cranks like with oil pressure and a jump box. Just kind of sounds weird, but less weird. It's almost like it's slowing down for 2 different cylinders and the others are weak. I guess I should do a compression check. I'm asked often, Jamie, did you do a compression check? Why don't you do a compression check? Well, I usually don't, because I can tell by ear whether the cylinders are even or not. In this case, I'm sure leaning toward not. So a compression check is probably going to be a really good idea. This uneven cranking thing has me a bit worried. I'm not 100% sure how we're going to get there, but I know where we're going. And I believe this is deserving of a woo! In no way do I expect this carb and intake to work better on this 225 than they did on the 170. Remember, the two have the same bore, piston, cylinder head, everything. The only difference in the 225 is a longer stroke and the taller deck, of course. This really shouldn't work. And when it doesn't work, we'll do something different for a carb. But again, just for fairness in testing, I want to see what this does compared to the 170. Oh, also important note, I am not putting the intercooler on this thing. We're running a carburetor, no fuel injection. we really shouldn't need that. We've got atomizing fuel in the venturis of our carburetor to pull heat out of the compressed air coming from the turbo. That should be sufficient for our purposes here. I'm going to run with a boost referenced mechanical pump. I'll show you the process for setting that up in a little bit. It's a totally different setup than what I had in mind originally, but it should do something, and something would be great. That's a tomorrow Jamie problem though. Right now, I reckon it's time for steak. Dang. Nice today. Probably too nice to be working on this piece of junk. Compression test time. Okay. 125 on number 1. Here's cylinder 2 though. In the immortal words of Buster Scruggs, that ain't good. Number 3 was fine. Number 4 is pretty stout. 5 was also fine. 6 is a hair off the mark, but not bad. What you really want out of your compression test is consistency. And we almost have that here, except number 2, and number 5 again is probably down 10 PSI. Anything under 100 is probably really bad. Now I am fairly certain this is a valve or valve adjustment issue because I wasn't seeing the needle jump up on every rotation. Rings couldn't do that, only a sticky or slightly maladjusted valve could because it's not sealing every time. Got the valve cover off. I was looking for like a sunken exhaust valve or a similar horrible issue. All I found is this. There's a shim under the spring for the intake valve number 2 and it is slid out of its little hole. I'm guessing that means it was never installed correctly. I'm not sure how that could possibly contribute to our issue, but I am going to try and get it back in where it goes. Byron's here, and he's going under the truck to install the drive shaft and stuff. Meanwhile, I got that shim pop back in there, and I did back off both valve adjustments just a hair. Maybe I was mistaken the first time, or maybe I improved things, but now it's consistently puffing, and I'm seeing 90 PSI. So, to see if this is a ring issue, which at this point I'm pretty sure it is, I put a few drips of oil in that cylinder and we're going to crank it again. If it is a ring sealing issue, the oil will seal up the rings temporarily and the number will go up. Oh, what do you know? 109? Something like that. So we do have a ring sealing issue. The fact that the number came up with oil added to the cylinder confirms that. This could mean a couple things. It could actually have a damaged ring, or this cylinder could have been dead for a while. Those rings could have been washed with gas. You know, if there was like a misfire, bad plug wire, something of that nature. What I'm going to do is just run it, and either the compression will come back or it won't. Either way, really.
This is my home now.
It looks comfy.
It's pretty great.
Working on this trailer has always been really fun. There you go. Yes, we totally could have taken it off the trailer, but we didn't. Before I put them back in, I am going to gap these obviously brand new copper Autolite plugs for boost. I'm going to shoot for something like 24 thousandths. I can't find my actual spark plug gapping tool, so I'm just going to press them against the side of the bed on the ramp truck and try not to go too far. I'll check the gaps with the 24 thousandths feeler gauge. I've had a bunch of comments about gapping the plugs for boost on recent Turbo Valiant videos. Clearly from people that missed earlier episodes where I did that. I think these plugs are generally gapped at the factory at 32 thousandths. Here's a factory gap, and here's one closed down to 24. Depending on who you ask, this is either 100% necessary in all situations where boost is involved, or not at all important until you reach higher boost levels, which we won't be seeing in this build. The theory is, with the wider gap under boost, higher cylinder pressures, the spark can actually be extinguished. Tightening the gap is supposed to keep that from happening. Plugs are back in. Yeah, you can hear a skip at number 2 and a slowdown at number 4, but it sounds still not great. Whatever, doesn't matter. Moving on. Because the factory valve cover's off, I'm pretty much obligated to install something cooler. I have the finned offie cover, but that seems way too good for this. This is a chrome one I got from Evan at Rocket. It has a little ding that was formerly covered by a very worn Clifford sticker. Probably should have left that on there. Also, it's split around a couple of the bolts here at the back, so I'm going to have to seal that somehow. One more issue. I don't think I actually have a gasket. I have every other gasket for a Slant 6 except for that. Driveline's in, but it turns out the transmission isn't mounted, and we also need a speedometer cable and a shift linkage and some wires. Byron's not happy. I found a valve cover gasket in the bed of the truck, and I thought it was the right one, so I siliconed the cover, only to find out it is not, in fact, the right one. Thankfully, My new Scamp engine came with 2. Maximum comfort and relaxation. This cover is actually split around all 4 of the bolt holes on the passenger side, the downhill side of the cover. Anyway, a bit of right stuff will fix that, I hope. I truly don't know why I did all of this work. There was nothing wrong with the factory cover and it matched the engine. But now it's shiny. You know, if I had a bunch of extra T-handles to put on there, I would have done that. But I'm reserving those for the 273 project. Time to put the cap and wires on. I lined it up at TDC by the timing mark, and I do notice the rotor points right at that red mark, so I guess that was correct. That's going to be cylinder 1 right here. Another big point to the good for working on a Slant 6 in a truck, you can actually reach the distributor, and running the plug wires is super easy. This is a shiny new mechanical fuel pump, which I've just removed from the Slant 6. Note, it has a vent hole here. We're going to boost reference this pump. And what that'll do is back up the diaphragm in the pump with boost pressure. The reason we need to do that is because the bowls in the carburetor in the blow-through application are also pressurized with boost, and that boost will raise the pressure high enough to overcome the pressure coming out of the fuel pump and will run out of the gas. By referencing it here, we similarly raise the pressure out of the pump, and this is supposed to work up to about 10 psi. If you don't know, a mechanical fuel pump is essentially just a big rubber diaphragm and a pair of check valves, one on the outlet side, one on the inlet side. That diaphragm is basically actuated by a spring in here. The arm lifts the diaphragm up and then it relaxes when it comes off of its lobe on the cam, or whatever actuates it in your engine, and then the spring forces the diaphragm back down. Boost pressure on the back side of that diaphragm will aid the spring, and this should raise the fuel pressure. Again, there are diminishing returns on that. I think 10 psi is about as high as you can go. To make the connection, I'm going to drill out this vent hole, which is there so that the diaphragm regularly has no pressure or vacuum behind it. I'm going to take this to, I think, 21/64, which according to my tap chart is the right size for 8th NPT pipe thread. Man, I hardly ever use this set of pipe taps, but they're getting a workout this week. Note, in case you're wondering, this area is completely separate from the area that attaches to the crankcase. You will not be blowing boost in here around the drive and into the block. Ha ha, nipple. Add this to the list of things I've never actually done before. Although I have done a lot of reading on blow-through carb applications over the years. Ta-da! Oh, it's hot. I hate it. It is a bit cooler under here, which is nice. Anyway, lots and lots of things have happened in the last couple hours. For one, we've got a mounted transmission. We've got shift linkage. We've got no kickdown still, but we'll get to that. We've got cooling lines, which I just need to tighten up now. Byron did successfully get the drive shaft installed. Most of the transmission things are handled. Also, cooling system. The transmission lines are actually running to a radiator up there. Somewhere up there. These transmission cooling lines are always the absolute worst thing. First, you got to make sure the fitting is tight enough in the transmission that it's not going to tighten while you're trying to do this, or loosen later. Then you need to have your 1/2-inch wrench on hand to hold that and keep from massively over-tightening it as you spin down the 5/8 hex line nut. It's a delicate balance. It's really annoying, and it's also very difficult to get those threads started. We have an added amount of stupid here because there's a previous rubber repair that looks terrible, and, turbo stuff. Did have a small issue with the speedometer cable. Actually, 2 issues. This isn't the correct speedo drive. I think this is an earlier one, or maybe this is some later concoction. I don't know. This is plastic. It didn't really want to fit in the transmission for one thing, although I did kind of sort of get it started. The cable, which again, not the correct factory type. It's some funky one that has a spinning line nut instead of the plastic that pops on. It's like 6 inches short or more. So we're just not going to have a speedometer for now. But I had to plug the hole to prevent fluid pouring everywhere. This is a 90s Jeep Grand Cherokee speed sensor that screws into the transfer case. We've also got radiator hoses. Nice, but I got to figure out heater hoses still. Also screw down the bottom of the manifold. Also figure out adapting 5/16 fuel line to 3/8 fuel line for the Holley carburetor we're going to rip right off of here. Need to terminate my boost reference for the pump. That's going to go into this line, which comes straight off of the compressor housing. You don't want this to see vacuum. You only want this to see boost pressure. I seem to have misplaced my shorty 5/8 snap-on wrench. This is most displeasing. Everything over here is together enough to run. Plug, wires, coils mounted, fix the trigger wire from the box, which has been fixed before and really needs a major rethink. The distributor is connected. I'm going to leave this one for now with the stock curve, although I may well put my locked out one in here later. This truck had a battery isolator like a camper truck would have. I don't think it ever had a camper. Anyway, I deleted that and all of the extra wiring. I need to heat shrink this. I was kind of hoping the sun would just do it for me. Anyway, the alternator's all connected now. We should have ignition, except of course, if there's a box over there, it's definitely not grounded. No, I see the plug. No box. Wrench located. Haven't found my mind yet. Word to the wise, it's not a question of whether your dual feed Holley lines will leak or not. It's how badly. I reefed the ever-living crap out of these. It probably won't be enough though. Hopefully this random black box on the seat is good. If not, we may have to consider alternatives. Dude, that's a 5-pin. I never have 5 pins. You know, the 5-pin module like this is why you need the dual ballast resistor. The second side powers a circuit inside this thing. In the 4-pin, the resistor was moved inside here, and the dual resistor is no longer necessary. Wiring's laid out. 5-pin ignition module is in. Again, don't know if it's any good. We're going to find out. I did attach the starter relay to the inner fender. Seemed like a good idea. Ballast resistor is screwed down. Also broken. Temperature probe. I'm going to try and put it in this plug. And I still do need to connect the oil gauge. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just trying to do whatever I have to do to fire this thing off and see if any of this is going to work. Manifold's actually attached now. Yay! That feels weird and sounds weird, so I don't know what's going on there. But we've got a key that does stuff, so we might as well see if this ignition works at all. Sure. Is the jump box dying? Not so much as a fart. Okay, well, now we get to diagnose an ignition issue. No test spark when I turn the power off and on. Or on and off, I should say. It should spark once when you turn it off. So either we've got a bad module or a wiring problem. It takes a Slant 6 to get parts for a Slant 6. Not true. You know, a bunch of people wanted me to put the turbo on this Scamp. I'm not willing to ruin it that way. Just nothing like cruising a hardtop on a nice sunny summer-ish day. Oh yeah. Pretty sure I said something a bit ago about never seeing 5-pin modules. Apparently I have 3 more. I grabbed one of those random 5-pin modules, and now when I key on and then off, we get that. A test spark. How about when it cranks? Hang on. Many sparks. Also, the box is still dying. What the hell is this? Party? That is something approximating a party. Ah! Gravity's happening. No! That's not good. That was fire. The fire's hot. It burned some of my arm hair, I think. Okay, I advanced the timing. Let's see if fire happens again. Probably will. That was almost something. Oh God. What's that horrible knocking sound? I like that. Oh, the pump is pumping. No fuel yet, but there will be. What do you think? Flex plate bolt or rod? More fire? Yeah, we might well have a valve sealing issue there. It's just gas, that's fine. Yeah! Okay, yeah. Okay, working battery, good idea. It charges. Nice. If it's dumb, but it works, it might still be dumb.
Good news, everyone. I'm kidding, it's not good news. I took off the transmission bell housing guard and checked all the flex plate bolts into the torque converter. They are tight.
What's this guy want now? At least it's not the green one. Yeah, that's in there, unfortunately. That's not going away, which is a real bummer. It sounds pretty good, guys. Sounds pretty good. All right, good news, bad news. Good news, it runs, it sounds pretty great, and it's much better than the 170 ever was. The bad news, of course, one of those rods is trying to come out and say hello. That's probably not going to stop me from filling the cooling system and taking it for a test rip, though. It's the next day, and all sorts of things have happened. First off, there's a working throttle. I actually used the factory hold-down bracket and that extension piece that was on it. I did clock it slightly differently. And I used a single wood screw to hold the cable onto the carb, but I think that's going to be fine. I don't know that we're going to have 100% throttle, but we never have yet with the Turbo Slant project. There's water in the engine now. I actually bought hose to correctly attach the heater and do all of that correctly. And I even have nice real coolant to put in this thing, but, you know, knock. So I just looped the heater connections and filled it with crappy tap water. Still leaking a little bit, probably because all of these clamps are garbage, but I can't be bothered to fix any of that. I did tee the boost reference to the pump off of this line coming off of the turbo compressor housing. This is what is used to actuate the wastegate there. And of course, we've got a line that tees off of this one-way flow valve that goes to our manual boost controller. I think this thing is dialed to some amount of boost. 8 or 9 pounds is what I was seeing in the other car, but that car was also very broken. I have expertly attached the boost gauge to the steering column here with some zip ties and a cyclone fencing post bracket. Minor oversight, I hadn't plumbed the control for the blow-off valve yet, so I've done that. I've taken another T here. That is going to run the boost gauge on the column. This is connected to full-time manifold vacuum, and this is our distributor advanced, which is connected to ported as the factory would have done it. Now I've got tons of vacuum and boost reference hoses running everywhere. It's kind of neat looking. This thing would not crank with the key before. Oh, the throttle's horrible. Anyway, I fixed it. And the way I fixed it was just wiggling things under the dash. No, this thing's sticky. Needs some lube. Oh, this is gonna be silly. It just idles like that, all day long. Thing's heavy. It's absurd. Absolutely absurd. Note to self, engine mount nuts. Forgot engine mount nuts. Battery hold down. Possibly more important than engine mount fasteners in my book. Certainly more important than whatever we're missing here. The verdict is in on the oil feed line to the turbo. It's absolute garbage. Yes, I'm gonna have to build one at some point. We don't need a spare tire jack, but we might need this. Yeah, I still hate the canopy, but it looks kinda cool. I like the wheels and tires. I like the way it sits. Very unassuming. Engine mounted. Also note, I put a see-through plastic fuel filter over here on the draw side going into the pump so I can monitor what's coming out of the tank. Not too much debris. With things halfway sorted, before I go test this thing on the street, I'm gonna take a quick detour past the tuning department. See, I've had various comments about the accelerator pump tuning on the Holley here, something I am well versed with. My entire approach to this has always been, we'll get into the particulars of tuning when the setup actually kinda sorta works. I'm gonna step down the accelerator pump cam to something way more mild because this engine's tiny and we don't need a big gigantic pump shot. This thing had the green cam in it on position 1. That is one of the most aggressive pump settings there is. I'm going to step it down to the black, which is one of the most mild ones there is. I think I'll probably put that on position 1, and we'll see if that takes out the obvious immediate bog when you hit the throttle in this thing. Also, I'm going to retune the idles now that it's kind of sort of warm. It's still not the happiest if you just stab the throttle, but if you roll into it, it's not quite what I would describe as clean, but we're getting there. All right, so this thing is billowing smoke, but unlike in the Valiant, it's oil. It reeks of burning oil. It doesn't even smell rich, although I'm sure it probably is. I've got the idle screws balanced now. It's certainly a lot smoother and seems happier, but it's almost worse. Yeah, maybe it liked the bigger pump shot. Don't mind this is normal. Slightly overfilled the radiator. Defying comprehension, this thing actually liked the bigger pump cam. Here it is now. And here it is if I push on this arm as I rev it. Okay, it was easier to do smoothly with two hands. But anyway, put the green one back in. Thermostat just opened. Radiator is getting warm. Very nice. Oh, also, I was going to take this big, crazy, heavy-duty fan off in favor of the standard floor blade, but I didn't. Don't mind that loose bolt. We'll fix that later. You know, when we replace the bottom end of this thing. Okay, here's a good hot start. Nice. All right, known issues. No power brakes. Don't currently have anything on this engine to attach those to, and I'm not going to worry about it for the short term. It'll be fine up and down the street. We do not have any kickdown connected to this transmission. I'd have to get very creative with linkage or order another cable to make that happen, or steal it off the Valiant, which I don't want to do. So I'm going to shift it manually. It's going to shift terribly when it does, and just know this is a super terrible idea. It's billowing oil smoke everywhere. The tune is still bad. And of course the knock. Otherwise, everything's awesome. Let's see what it do. I do seatbelt for safety, but I don't actually want to touch that. Parking brake works mint. There's stuff back there. The sticky throttle thing might be a problem. That was 13 pounds. Oh, God. Yeah, shift linkage adjustment. What a good idea. All right, so far the experience is very reminiscent of when I first had boost and the atomic system on the 170 in the Valiant, and it kind of sort of worked. It would have that same hesitation, and then it would get into the boost, and sometimes it would be awesome, sometimes it would be terrible, kind of an equal mix of the two. And that seems to be about where we're at. Okay, my random ear stab for timing is 7 degrees. That's probably a bit too much, given that this is a stock curve distributor. The locked out one at 24 is probably what I would like to go with. For now, I'm just going to back it off so it's a little safer, and then we'll proceed. Okay, this distributor has about 25 degrees in it, and that's pretty safe under boost, actually. I would have shot for it locked down around 24, so maybe this is okay. Oh yeah, the stupid canopy tried sliding off immediately. Not ideal. It's nice just being able to see the engine. It's just running on whatever fuel is in the tank. The gauge says there's like 3/4 of a tank. I don't know that to be true. That's interesting. It like breaks up, and then if you get out of it and go back in, then it's happy. And I think what's probably happening there is it's loading up on fuel when the power valve opens. For this application, I probably don't even want a power valve, or I at least want a boost specific one. Obviously, there's some tuning stuff that needs to happen there. But once the stars align and everything seems kind of right, oh, it pulls. It pulls pretty good. Woo! Woo!
like 6 PSI. That's not enough.
Yeah, you can hear right where things get weird. All right, obviously this is gonna need some work, but unlike the previous turbo slant efforts, it shows promise. It still runs, it still starts like this. Nice. Something smells hot. Not exactly sure what. Could be a lot of things. Man, I'm kind of starting to like this piece of garbage. Okay, a little rich there. That's the number 3 plug, which of course should be the richest of all of them. The middle runners are slightly shorter, the outer runners are slightly longer, and these are just kind of somewhere in the middle. Outer ones are rich too. Okay, we're super mega rich everywhere. Yeah, super mega rich tends to be safer, but it's certainly not good for runnability or power. Remember, this is a 750 Holley double pumper, and I only put this on the 170 for testing, which it failed miserably at. I left it on the manifold when I put it on this engine so we could do like an apples to apples comparison. And apples to apples, it actually kind of works on here. And now I'm at a point where maybe I can tune this into working really well. If I am to build a double pumper Holley for the application, I'll probably go back to this, which was my original plan. It's a 600 or a 650 or something like that. A little bit more suitable to the tiny engine size. I made mention of the power valve in the Holley. Most likely what's happening is even in super low boost situations, when I get into the throttle, this thing is just slamming open and sending a bunch of extra fuel down the throats that it doesn't necessarily need. There's also a question of jet sizes. Most likely, again, these are much too large in the carburetor we have right now. Another place we could certainly have issues, the size of the air bleeds in that carburetor. This is a particular metered air brake in the fuel circuits of your carburetor, and depending on their size, the resulting amount of fuel delivered can vary as well. I've never discussed these carb tuning possibilities on the Turbo Valiant project because I never intended to have a carburetor. But I'll tell you what, from where I'm standing right now, it sure looks like the double pumper Holley is the right tool for the job here. I think we can build and tune one of these to the point that this combination works very well. Also, we can buy an air hat that's actually good for boost. Because I no longer have an EFI computer screen to look at, we're going to need to get a wideband gauge for this thing. So what did we learn here? Did we learn that I should have started with a 225 and the 170 cubic inch size was the entire problem with this program? I don't think so. I think repeated testing with the 170 with a less than ideal tune condition probably murdered the ring seal and sent that engine to Valhalla. I'm going to do a compression check, which I've been asked about many times, to see if I can confirm that. That'll be in a future video. A hood appeared as if by magic, and just in the nick of time because it's starting to mist, I guess. Anyway, thanks to Tracy for the help on that. I did break one of the bolts. I don't want to talk about it. Anyway, I think I was talking about things we've learned. I'm honestly still not sure. But at this point, I do know where we're going next. We're going to tune a Holley carb to work for this application. We're going to tweak the timing curve. We're going to get a wideband gauge. And we're going to see if we can make this turbocharged 225 Slant 6 pickup run the best that it can. And if it explodes in a glorious fireball, well, I hope the cameras are rolling. Now the only question that remains is, where do I put this dang thing? I am out of space, like fully out of space. Well, anyway, hopefully you enjoyed that. I certainly did. Tune in next time. We'll certainly learn more things the hard way. Until then, as ever, thank you very much for watching. And remember, say yes to the $500 marketplace fines. This is the way.